Hi, this is Hamada and welcome to Final 50. Now, 2025 was an absolutely incredible year. I traveled to over 20 countries. I also did some new things like these walking tours that we produced almost in every country I went to, from Oaxaca to Iraq to Beverly Hills here in California and a lot of different places. And during my adventures, I had a lot of friends and supporters just like you ask me all kinds of questions like, what's your favorite place to eat on these trips? Or what was the scariest moment? Or what was the most euphoric and blissful moment that you had? And so I decided to kind of tie it all together for you, showing you where I traveled to, some of the select countries I've been to, and tying some of those questions there so that I can answer them for you and make this as fun and interactive as possible as we kind of do a year in review of 2025, the fourth year of Final 50. So the first journey I want to take you to is in East Timor, which actually was one of the first places I visited in 2025, an island kind of in between the South Pacific and Asia. And while I was there, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I spoke with someone who recommended this kind of eco-touristic experience where I go plant rice in the rice fields and then also try fishing out there in the rice fields. So I went out there all kind of gung-ho that I'm going to be able to crush this, got into this rice paddy, and they said, okay, start planting rice. So I took stalks of rice and just start shoving it in the ground, just like bunches of them. And the guy's like, no, you got to pull it apart and put them in one by one, kind of like pushing it into the water. And I kept making mistakes. And another thing was, in the water, there was all these like floating spiders. So I'm freaking out about these spiders, shoving in the rice. And then finally, after like the fourth or fifth try, I kind of somewhat got it right. And then after that, I went to try the fishing. And right in the middle as I'm fishing, the bamboo pole broke in half. So a real funny travel fail to start off 2025. But nonetheless, East Timor was an awesome experience. Highly recommend you check it out. Somebody asked me what was like the most blissful, like euphoric moment you had in 2025. And I'd have to say, for me, it was traveling and skiing in France. Every year, a group of guys, we come together, we go skiing in different parts of Europe primarily. And this year we decided to go between Italy and France. So we tried 4 different places, but one of them was really, really exceptional, Courchevel. And what we did is we kind of went deep into the mountains, away from a lot of people, and the weather was absolutely perfect. It had just snowed the day before, so it was kind of like a bluebird day. Beautiful, sun was out, powder was deep. I had some great music kicking, all your friends around you, and we were just kind of skiing off piste, and it was absolutely incredible. Just one of those moments where you're so grateful and thank God that you're alive to experience that. So in terms of an absolute surreal moment, I would have to have said so many places in Turkmenistan, but for the purposes of this review, I kind of want to change it up and talk about an experience I had not too long ago, which was in the island of Tuvalu, which is right there in the South Pacific, hundreds and hundreds of miles from the nearest other island. And the crazy experience I had that was just so surreal was when we were landing in the airport, there were all these houses and businesses and stuff like alongside the airport track. And I didn't get it. I'm like, why is there so many homes here? When we landed and we kind of went into the terminal, what was crazy is after I got my bag, and I say terminal, it's really kind of like a building. I got my bag, and as I went out, I was like, okay, where's my hotel? And my hotel was literally about 30 to 50 feet from the terminal. As in, the hotel was right on the tarmac. And so many other hotels and homes, the National Bank of Tuvalu is on the tarmac. And what's crazy about the tarmac, the runway, which was built during World War II by the US forces, is that at night, a lot of people come out and play all kinds of sports on it. Whether it's they're playing rugby or football. I went running around because I love to run in every new country I go to. So I ran around the airport kind of from one end to the other. And what was even crazier and surreal was that around 6:45 at night, they have this kind of pause where they pray. It's kind of like a moment of observance, of religious observance. So they pray from 6:45 sharp. Somebody starts hitting a bell across the islands or the whole country. They hit this bell, and then from 6:45 to 7 p.m., everything stops. And the cops come out and they kind of enforce this. And everything stops. And at 7 p.m. exactly, it kicks off again as if nothing happened. Absolutely surreal. Tuvalu really was a trip that I had never expected, and an experience that was just absolutely like, is this for real? 2025 was also very special in that I was able to finally travel with my partner to her country of origin, Cambodia. And so I would say the most deep human connection I had on these trips, especially in 2025, was traveling with her, staying with her family, visiting other family members, seeing her friends, and not just them, who are obviously very nice and kind to me, but also other Cambodians that were just so generous, so caring, so curious to learn and to share their experiences. And while I was there, I met a director, kind of a producer director that kind of runs her own film studio, and such a nice person. She was super gracious with her time. She told me a lot about what the hopes and the dreams are and aspirations are of the Cambodian people, especially Generation Z and X and so forth. Just so nice, such incredible people, such warm people, and such a beautiful place to have that kind of human connection and human bond. And I also want to give an honorable mention to some other human connections I had. Kenny, when I was in Angola, was an amazing host. Tim, when I was in Turkmenistan, was an absolutely incredible guide. And Piguel, who became my driver for the day in Benin, was absolutely awesome. So such a beautiful thing about traveling across the world is making these human connections, some by hapstance, some planned, that really make the trip so much better. So I have to say, probably the most challenging physical and mental day I had this year, and really one of the craziest I've ever had, was traveling to Gabon. And the reason is, I was already in the Middle East visiting some friends when sadly my aunt, who's kind of like a mother to me and my sister, passed away. And so I flew back from the Middle East to California to attend her funeral, and then the next day flew back to the Middle East to catch my flight to Gabon, about a 22-hour transit between the two places. And when I got to Gabon, which made it even crazier, was that I hadn't received my visa. And when I arrived in the airport, I thought the receipt that I had applied for was my visa and I could just pick it up there at the airport, and that wasn't the case. What ended up happening is they said, you don't have a visa, so you have to get back on the plane and go back to where you came from, literally. But thankfully, I was able to speak to some people, and they were very kind and gracious. They helped me out and guided me through the process, and they gave me kind of like a pass, and I was able to get into the country, enjoy Gabon for a couple of days before heading off to some other places in Africa. So it was really absolutely exhausting, kind of came down to the wire if I'm gonna make it. I was exhausted, but it all worked out. And so it just makes it even more appreciative. You're even more grateful for that experience. This is wild, but I had a bunch of questions and I could not think of a better place to that really covered a lot of it. My favorite unexpected place, the best food that I had, and the scariest moment all in one location, and that location was Oaxaca. We were kind of planning it around February, me and my partner, and we decided to go to Oaxaca, and we knew the food was good, and I'm not much of a foodie, but when we went there, it was phenomenal. Like, the food was just unbelievable because they cook it a traditional way. They use local ingredients. They source the local ingredients obviously from there, and the ingredients, I'm not just talking about the fruits and vegetables. I'm talking about the spices that makes the mole, that makes the type of chicken. The dishes that they have are just remarkable, and the desserts. So it was just unbelievably mind-blowing from a food perspective, and from just a locale. When we walked for hours, again, I did another walking tour of Oaxaca that you guys should check out. That was just awesome. Just such a nice experience to explore that city. The weather was perfect. We even went a little bit outside, and in fact, that's when the scary moment happened, because we were driving to go to a place called Evre de Agua. That's kind of like a hot springs, about an hour and a half out. But for whatever reason, I had switched it off so that we were only taking surface streets, not freeways. And we went into this mountain road that was just absolutely treacherous. My partner was like freaking out that something was going to happen. But thankfully we got there, and thankfully we made it. And then we figured that we had made that mistake, and so we took the freeways back to Oaxaca. Definitely worth checking out Evre de Agua. It is. And obviously definitely worth checking out Oaxaca, because it was absolutely a highlight of 2025. But I have to say, the biggest culture shock I had in 2025 was going to Benin and specifically to Ouida. Ouida is famous for several reasons. One, very sadly, it's the place where a lot of slaves, hundreds of thousands, would embark to go across the Atlantic. So it was kind of like the point of no return, or the door of no return, they called it. And there was this walkway that you walk along the way. It's about 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers to get to where they went from the central market where they were sold to where they left to the Atlantic, mostly to Brazil, South America, but obviously to North America as well. But the culture shock for me there was that Ouida was also a place for voodoo, because actually voodoo was originated in Benin. And so what happened was we got there and we went to this temple of the snakes where they practice voodoo, which is worshiping inanimate objects like snakes or stones or iron and so forth. And they had this whole room filled with these pythons that I put one on me, and then you see them kind of everywhere, almost like Raiders of the Lost Ark or the Temple of Doom of Indiana Jones. But what's crazy about the culture shock was that across the street from the Temple of the Snakes was the oldest basilica in West Africa, which is wild because you have this church that's, monotheistic and believes in God, and across the way you're talking about voodoo and believing in inanimate and animate objects and worshiping them, and they were just literally across the street from each other. So it's absolute culture shock for me there. I would have to say the most transformative moment or personal reset for me was in Turkmenistan. And most people would say, I don't get it. They thought that the most surreal moment for me would be in Turkmenistan, or the craziest place would be Turkmenistan. And while there may be truth to that, Turkmenistan also has so much more than that to offer, including this place called Yangakala Canyon. There I went with Tim, who I told you about, as well as the driver. We drove out for hours into this canyon area that kind of looked like some canyons I'd seen in Kazakhstan and obviously the Grand Canyon in the US. But we were out there, and one morning I woke up at like 6 a.m. and just walked to the edge of the cliff overlooking the canyon, and then all the Karakum Desert, which goes for hundreds of miles, thousands of miles actually. Absolutely serene and beautiful. You don't hear anything except maybe an eagle or something like that in the distance. There was no one around us probably for about 100 miles. I just sat there and it was meditative. It sent me back to just feeling so grateful for being alive and being able to have the privilege to travel. And I thought about this thing called emet, or a moment in time, that you have these moments that are so surreal, that are so serene, that are so contemplative, that you think about it in those moments in your life where you're stressed out and sad, and you just kind of reflect back to those moments like I had in Turkmenistan. And it's so fortunate and so lucky for me that I can do that, and I did that in Turkmenistan. Now, the most cinematic shot, there were many, I have to say. In Sao Tome, I had an incredible place where I took some beautiful pictures, obviously in Turkmenistan, like I said. But the one I want to talk about is in Iraq. Because what I did is I went to Iraq, I went to Baghdad to visit family, and then decided to jump in this rideshare taxi to Babylon, one of the oldest places in the world, an incredible civilization. It's where Hammurabi had his laws, where civilizations were born, where the Tower of Babel existed. And they've obviously recreated a lot of it and renovated lots of parts of it, which is great. But when I was there, I did again a walking tour of Babylon, which again, you should check out. And while I was walking, I saw this kind of hillside. Oddly enough, on the hill is a palace that Saddam had built in the 80s that now is completely dilapidated and is an awesome place to explore on its own, which again, I did a walking tour of as well. But while I was up there, you have this incredible view, not only of Babylon, which from the top there looks like a maze, but to the left, if you're standing and you're looking at Babylon, you'll see this incredible river, which is the Euphrates, which I've never seen. Even as an Iraqi American, I've never seen the Euphrates. And so you see it and it's just kind of meandering through the countryside. Absolutely beautiful. It's like beautiful blue water. And you just thought like, wow, this place has existed, has been inhabited for thousands and thousands of years. And they all saw that same river doing that same motion. It was absolutely beautiful. So I took some pictures from up there and filmed those walking tours, and I would have to say it was the most cinematic shot and also personal for me experience that I had in 2020. I have to say one of the best kind of hidden gems off the map places that I visited was in Angola, in Luanda with Kenny. He was like, hey, I want to take you to have mufiti, which is this delicious type of seafood that they prepare there in Angola. And he took me to this restaurant that's really kind of in the cuts. It's not too far actually from the capital, from the center of the capital, but in an area that I would imagine most tourists would just not go to. It's very, very local. And we went there, we had this delicious mufiti, and what was really beautiful about this place is not just the food, but it was the music and the ambiance, because this kid kind of comes in with his guitar and starts playing this incredibly beautiful melodic, and I don't speak Portuguese, and it's in Portuguese, song about Angolan patriotism, which you'll see in the vlog, the full feature vlog when we release it. Absolutely beautiful. And what was really incredible was everybody started singing it around me, and I had to go back and find it. But actually, what's wild is the way he sang it to me is better than the original version by the original artist. So that spot in that area was just so beautiful and such a hidden gem for me, and such a great way to experience the raw local nature of Angola, and especially Luanda. So the biggest plot twist, craziest change kind of that I had in 2025 on my trips had to be when I was on my flight from Tuvalu back to Fiji, getting ready to then fly from Fiji to Nauru and Kiribati. As I'm about to board, I get an email that says your flight to Nauru is canceled with no definitive recovery flight. So they just said, go to the airport and figure out, you know, the next step. And so I did, and that was, I can't remember what day, let's say it's a Sunday. They had no recovery flight on a Sunday, no recovery flight on a Monday, no recovery flight on Tuesday. So I just skipped it. They put me up in a hotel for 3 nights in Fiji, and then I stayed the additional 3 nights till I caught my original flight back to the US. What was awesome was that I rented a car and then decided, because Fiji water is probably my favorite water out there, and so I decided, I read the back of the label of Fiji water, I found the address of where it's sourced and decided to rent a car and drive there. So I drove there, saw where it's bottled and where the water comes down to get bottled, the source. Or one of the sources, because there's probably a lot of sources there in Fiji. And so I went there, hiked through a mountain area, talked to local villagers who told me kind of where to go to this waterfall, which was again one of the sources, which was awesome. And then I spent also a couple of extra days on an island, Tokoriki Island, and went to Castaway Island and stuff like that. So even though I wasn't able to accomplish my goal of going to Nauru and Kiribati, I was still able to do a lot on that trip in Fiji, which was awesome. And even though it was a crazy plot twist and everything was canceled, we made the best out of it. So this is one I get a lot. What was the best sunrise or sunset that you experienced? And I have to say, it was in the Solomon Islands, in a place called Edison's Ridge. And the reason for that, I think, is because of the symbolism of it. In the 1940s, 1942, for about 6 months, it was one of the biggest flashpoints of World War II between the Japanese and US forces, and I think Australian forces as well. And there was an airport there called Henderson's Field that the US forces were trying to defend. The Japanese originally built it. The US was trying to defend it and take it over. And right next to it was this place called Bloody Ridge. That's where they filmed The Thin Red Line. And when I went there, it was kind of this, you know, it was the sun was coming down, it was kind of getting towards nightfall. And as the taxi driver was explaining to me kind of what happened and, you know, the battle and so forth, you see the kind of sun setting over this beautiful bubolic area that was just so beautiful. And I just took it all in. It was quiet, you could just hear the kind of villagers in the background. It just made that sunset, which was already remarkable, as you'll hopefully get a chance to see in the South Pacific. They're just such beautiful sunsets. And because it had just rained, the clouds were there and the sun was just reflecting against them. Absolutely stunning sunset. I want to kind of finish this with probably one of the most poignant places I visited in 2025. That was not only one of the places that had the best cinematic shots, some of the most incredible food, some of the nicest people, and also some of the scariest moments. But it also kind of reiterated why I do what I do with Final 50. You know, kind of answering like, this is why I travel, right? Why I do what I do. And that is the island of Sao Tome, which is about 200-300 miles from the Cameroonian coast. Now, this place is just so unique. There's just so much to do there. I stayed on the main island, and I decided to drive from north to south and then back north. rented a car to do that. And one of the days I was driving, as I was driving, I stopped by a place like Rocha Agua Iza. And it's these former plantations of coffee and chocolate and or cacao and stuff like that. And this one was completely abandoned. It was one of the biggest. And it's really famous because it has a hospital there that's very iconic. But the point is, I kind of walked through the village, got there, and as I got there, I kind of like shrugged off being shown around by some of the local villagers because I'm like, you know, I'm just gonna take some pictures and leave. But suddenly I got swarmed by these local kids who are living in between this kind of dilapidated plantation homes, like housing, like structures. And they just kind of came out and they were so friendly. I've never experienced something like this because I don't usually run out there and, you know, like hug random kids and stuff like that. So these kids kind of come out of nowhere and they just kind of, like, as I said, swarmed me and just like kind of took me into their world, into their universe.
Very good.
Claro.
Amigo, esse é o que faz o chocolate.
Sim.
Muito bom.
Muito bom.
And they showed me kind of where they live and where they sleep. And the cutest part was when they took me to the back of the plantation house and they showed me their garden. So they showed me like lemongrass and cacao, like the actual fruit, and all these other fruits and vegetables. And they just kind of picked it out and would crack it and let me taste it. And, oh, you have to try this. And obviously they're speaking in Portuguese and probably a local dialect as well. And I'm trying to speak in Spanish. Nobody's understanding anybody, but it's all kind of like hand gestures. And it just kind of showed me, again, like it doesn't really matter that we can't speak the same language, but just the sheer beauty of it, the euphoria, the innocence, the authenticity of it is really what the experience is about. That connection, that reason that I do what I do and experience the world. And I'll never forget that moment. So I really hope you enjoyed this year in review of 2025. It was, as I said, an exceptional year. We had like 6 or 7 times more watch hours. We had double the amount of subscribers. We finally hit 1 million views. So it's just been an amazing year from that perspective. It's been such a labor of love. Super slow, much slower than I would have ever anticipated or had the patience for, but because of these experiences that I kind of just shared with you right now, it just makes it all that much more worthwhile. And of course, the support that you've provided me for the last 4 years. So I thank you for that. And I have to say, always thank you for watching. We even had some merch this year. Stay curious. And I look forward to seeing you in 2026 on my next